Hello and welcome to the Lost Art Podcast. I'm Garen, I'm here with Paul.
Hello.
And this week we're going to be talking about somebody we have talked about before previously, but only in small little doses. But this week we're going to give an entire episode to the man, the myth, the murderer, Phil Spector.
Yeah.
One of the most controversial names in music production history, but also one of the biggest names in music production history. The list of artists that he's worked with is not necessarily never ending, but it's important who he worked with. And the styles that he developed were very important, still used to this day pretty much. So Phil Spector, I want to give it a little quick run around on who Phil Spector was, just so people understand, because we have covered a lot of this stuff, especially a lot of him being mental. On other podcasts, on other songs, and we gave away a lot of stories. We'll definitely rehash a couple of those today, but we're going to go through a couple of his songs, a couple of his big point songs. If we have some background information, we'll give you some background information about it. But essentially, Phil Spector was known as kind of the girl band group king, or the kind of pop group king. Straight out of high school, he started a band that done pretty well. That done pretty well. Our first song we're going to cover tonight will be that first band, one of his first big hits that he done, how he got his name out there in the music industry. But where it starts getting interesting with Phil Spector is when he starts getting married. His involvement with women is where things start getting really strange in the Spector world. His entire family situation is crazy from start to finish. Like it's mental. But his first marriage to a woman named Annette Mirar in 1963. She was the lead vocalist in a group called the Spectors 3 that he had set up. He was with her for a while, but he ended up having an affair with this woman, Veronica Bennett, who he changed her name. He made her change her name to Ronnie Spector. And he was with her for a while as well. He ended up getting married to her. And they got married in 1968, and they ended up adopting a son. And I think the year, here's a weird one for you. The year that they adopted their son, that Christmas, as a Christmas present to Ronnie, he adopted 2 more kids as a Christmas present without telling her. So right, yeah. Christmas morning, she gets up and there's just 2 children in the house.
Wrapped up in boxes.
Exactly. I got us 2 more, honey, for us.
I've got some pretty... That gets dark. I've got some stories about that.
Oh, yeah, there's some horrific stuff. Now, Bennett goes on... We covered this before on our podcast, but I'll just give it again. She goes on and said she was held captive in the house that they lived in California for years and years. Phil had a glass casket made, like a Snow White style casket, and he had that put in the basement. And he would bring Ronnie down periodically and bring Ronnie's mother down and show her the casket and say, if she ever tries to leave me, that's where she ends up. So we can come down and still see her every day. That's where she's going. She's going into a glass casket. Eventually she's able to escape her kind of impromptu kidnapping that she was put under by her fella. Her mother helps her break out of the house, and they escape by dodging. It was like Escape from Auschwitz or something like this. It's a great escape. They dodging dogs and armed guards and stuff like that, because Phil Spector wouldn't go anywhere without armed guards. He also wouldn't even walk around his own house without being armed, because he was attacked when he was very, very young. He was attacked in a bathroom by a lot of fellas, and they kicked lumps out of him. So from that day onwards, every penny he had, he put into like weaponry and bodyguards. So he always had armed guards. He was always armed himself, and he had threatened to kill Ronnie Spector if she ever left him. So she had to sneak out the door. So when it came to that divorce settlement, Ronnie had to say that she didn't want any money off him. There was no future earnings. There was going to be none of that type of stuff. And she also had to give up custody of the children. She wanted to keep the kids because she wanted to save the kids. But apparently what had happened is Phil had got word to Ronnie and said, I've hired a hitman, and if you try to do me over in this divorce proceedings here, basically I'm going to have you shot, and the kids are never going to have a mother, so you better leave them with me. So he ends up with the kids. Now the kids go on to claim all sorts of stuff. I'll let you get into that later on, about absolute batshit mad stuff that goes on in their life. In 1982, Spector has twins, has natural born twins with his girlfriend, Janet Zavala, her name is. But he eventually moves on and has a third wife by 2000. This will be his third wife and his fourth major relationship, I think, that involves like children by 2006, with a woman called Raquel Short. Now, one of the things people talk about with Phil Spector was he was he batshit mad to begin with? Was he dangerous to begin with? Or was this a thing that kind of creeped up? You know, was he born like this? Was he born a killer? Was he born like a serial abuser? Was he born just fucked in the head?
He didn't have a great start. I don't. This is the major question that we'll never be able to answer.
Exactly.
There's loads of people who have been through worse. In fact, most people who've been through worse don't go on to hurt other people.
Exactly.
Really. They take it internalized, and God, some of them don't make it out at all. But it's hard to know. I honestly believe he would not have been this bad had his father not committed suicide and the mother not being super, super abusive. Yeah. And he was bullied his whole life. Now, that's not me trying to excuse anything. You just have to, anyone would agree that would cause a really bad start in your formative years to how you treat other people after that. Yeah. At the same time, though, I will say, like I just said, most people don't. Most people
don't get away with it. Now, in 1976, he had a massive car accident that proper fucked him up. He ended up with like 300 stitches on his face, 400 stitches to the back of his head, and this fucked up his hairline and his hair. So whenever you see Phil Spector from the kind of mid-70s on, he's always wearing a wig. That was always his gig. He wears a wig, and he wears really weird, elaborate curly hair wigs and long hair wigs and multicolored hair wigs. And so there is a case to be made for, I know, a lot of famous people who ended up having trouble later in life. They can track an awful lot of these kind of brain changes and changes in character back to big accidents as well.
I think he was definitely
he was on the road, I think. Yeah, he was definitely on the road from a young age, but something like that car accident where he suffered massive head trauma probably wouldn't have helped the issue either, you know. The big thing with Phil is the murder. Now, he'd been linked to, obviously, serial abuse and violence his entire life, especially against women. That seemed to be his bag.
Almost only against women.
Yeah, because he was a little small man, and I don't think he had the balls to put it up against anybody who could put it back up against him. You know, he was definitely
not without a gun. That was just
exactly. Yeah. It was like the big thing was guns. He was obsessed with guns and a massive collection of guns. Walked around.
He carried a different gun every day of the week. So exactly. He set them out.
Exactly. Yeah. So in 2003, Phil Spector shot the actress Lana Clarkson. Now, Lana Clarkson was like a B-movie actress who appeared in loads of weird sci-fi and horror movies, and she would have been known. She was in like Fast Times at Ridgemont High as almost a glorified extra almost, but she ended up doing a lot of B-movies and sci-fi movies, and because of this, she was kind of well loved on the convention circuit, especially amongst horror fans and science fiction fans. There's definitely a career to be chopped out there.
It's a weird episode we have to do today.
Yes, it is.
We have to talk about both sides of the coin of him, and the music is so incredible and innocent.
Yep.
And like, it's going to be a tough one, but like, there's no way we're not going to do an episode of Phil Spector. Because if someone said, why are you doing an episode on him? He killed someone. Like, hang on a second. You listen to fucking things about Ted Bundy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's different. No, it's not.
Exactly. Shut up. Everybody's talking about Night Stalker television show, and he was a pedo murderer. You know what I mean? Like,
oh God,
it's absolutely insane. So anyway, in 2003, he shoots Lana Clarkson. Now, he said, in his own words, I think it was an accident because she was just kissing the gun. It was an accidental suicide. She was kissing the gun and she pulled the trigger. But one of the guys who worked for Phil in the house said that he's seen Phil, after he heard the gun go off, he's seen Phil walking around with the gun in his hand, saying, I think I've just killed somebody. And that guy ended up having to give evidence in court. Now, the first time it went to court, it was deemed a mistrial. It was a hung jury. They couldn't decide whether this is going to be a thing or not. So he ends up getting away. I think he walked away in a $1 million bail package or something like that. Right. While he kind of was fully awaiting trial on that. It ends up going to trial again at the end of 2008 with the same judge. Strangely enough, because I thought sometimes they have a big kind of mix-up case like that, they might have to get a new judge in. But this time, it's the same guy, same judge comes in, and the retrial begins, and without a shadow of a doubt, he's found guilty. He's sentenced to 19 years to life is how he was deemed to serve his time, but he was old enough going in. He would have been eligible for parole in 2024, I believe, is when he would have been eligible maybe to get out, and he probably would have, because from what I heard, he was like a model inmate. He just kind of kept to himself, and again, he's a small guy. He doesn't have his bodyguards, he doesn't have his guns. He's just going to shut his mouth and go along with it, you know.
Yeah.
But he died the 13th of January 2021 of complications due to COVID-19, and I don't think he was in the greatest of health for the last couple of years. Anyway, but
he couldn't talk.
Yeah, exactly.
For I think for the last 4 years, something like that.
It's crazy.
He could talk.
Crazy.
Like something happened to his voice.
Yeah,
it could have been all the jip.
It could have been just being used as a fleshlight in prison, and fingers crossed that happened to him. He was a fucking scumbag, talented scumbag, but a scumbag nonetheless. And there's absolutely no fucking need. Like, you're talking about a guy who made millions upon millions and became their go-to guy for a particular sound and a particular
He was
style.
never going to be happy though. Like,
no,
based on his childhood, I don't think he could have ever been happy.
No.
Like, so, and the way he treated people was because of how he was treated. And it's sad that he didn't have the fucking neck to not reproduce it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, look, we'll talk about his music anyway.
Yes.
It's very, very interesting.
Absolutely. So we should probably just jump into a couple of his songs and get that motoring along.
Yeah.
And I think, have I got the first one down? I think I've got the first one. I got the first one down. So, as I said earlier on, one of his first bands coming straight out of high school was a band called the Teddy Bears. And Teddy Bears was a 3-piece, sometimes a 4-piece. That kind of, but doing the kind of standard late 50s, early 60s kind of pop, you know, cruising along in my automobile kind of malarkey. But a lot of the time, a lot of these bands had to aim towards doing something not necessarily religious, but something that could be considered to be could go either way, you know. But they released a song called "To Know Him Is to Love Him" in Jesus, what year was that?
52?
No, it was later than that. It was like 57 or 58 they released that.
Was it?
Yeah, and it was huge. It was a global sensation. It stayed in the Billboard Top 100 for 23 weeks. It was number one for 3 weeks. It done absolutely insane business for something that was recorded for $75 in a local studio. But Phil had this idea about how he wanted it to sound, and he was really good at kind of mimicking what was really hot in the charts at the time, but also realizing that, well, if this is hot right now, I think going by older trends, this is what they're going to want with the next kind of wave of cool stuff. So he was able to start throwing that kind of stuff in. So he wrote the song, he produced the song, and he performed the song as well. And that from that point on, people start paying attention to him, and he ended up actually getting a job as a producer, kind of not far off directly after this, and ended up owning a record label. Became like the youngest record label owner in America at the time, and it just became huge. Annette Goldstein, actually, who was one of the singers in the Teddy Bears, she went on. She was one of the singers in the Rocky song, Gonna Fly Now. Gonna fly now. She was one of those. Yeah, it's an absolute banger. She was one of those. But that was his first, that was the world's introduction to Phil Spector, was the Teddy Bears. It stuck around for a little while. None of the stuff they brought out afterwards didn't do any particular great big shakes, but that was the one that made everybody go like, who's this young fella? Like, he's 19 or something, like straight out of high school. He paid for it all himself. And this song is killing it. And he never really struggled after this again. With getting work.
I think he'd moved to LA.
Yes,
very young, because after the suicide, he moved there. So that, like, literally, that suicide had a mad effect on the rest of his life, because it went on to they moved to LA. Then that's how he got into that band and stuff like that. That's actually where, like, I think the Teddy Bears is the first time he tried the Wall of Sound.
I think
this famous thing that we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of the episode.
Exactly.
I think the way obviously the Wall of Sound is completely different than the way I'm about to describe it now. The first time he tried it is he played their demo tape back over the studio speakers for them to overdub another performance over it. So it's almost like a double version of it over it. Now it was an absolute mess, but that sort of gave way to, that's a nice big sound though, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's the first time that he did it with the Teddy Bears, I think.
So who is your first one?
My first one is one that would have come out about maybe 5 years after your one, when he was sort of becoming a fully fledged producer, and it's Bobby B. Sox and the Blue Jeans version of Zippity Doo Dah from 1962. So this is a really, really lovely, relaxed version of Zippity Doo Dah, because I don't like that Zippity Doo Dah song from the 1940s Disney film Song of the South, which is, you know, I don't know if we can, people don't really talk about that song much anymore. It's kind of it's very, very, what's antiquated in terms of like where people are now. Yeah. But this cover of it is really, really good. And it's the first time that we ever see him doing the sort of getting towards the wall of sound, because one of his engineers left on a guitar mic. He overloaded it by accident, like the level of it, and it created a distorted sound. And then normally you would think that Phil Spector's going to bollock him out of it. Yeah. But he should not actually leave that. That's great. And this was another step towards this kind of wall of sound or the Spector sound, because he was working on a formula of it. And the formula really started to take form later on, because the signature of it is 1 to 3 pianos, 4, 5, 6 guitars or layers of guitars, a few basses, a few bassists.
All different basses and bassists.
Yeah, all different drums, loads and loads and loads of different types of drums and stuff like that. And if it's played together with his so he would have the Wrecking Crew before they were called the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew are the greatest collection of session musicians from the 60s and 70s that ever existed. And he used Gold Studios because they had these echo chambers, which is just more of what he's going for, that reverb.
Like a big basement with speakers and mics in it, wasn't it? Yeah.
So that distorted sound that he got by accident from that thing, that gave way to the fuzz pedal, which everyone went mad for. The Beatles went mad for and all like that. So even though I think that was actually created in the 60s, I think it was mastered around, or sort of fixed around when they heard what he was doing. So that sort of gave way to the fuzz pedal. And that was Bobby B. Sox and the Blue Jeans. And that's just a little kind of start. It's just, I actually really, really like this version of the song. I would never, ever listen to the Disney one. But when you listen to this, it's mad trippy, like 60s version of it. So yeah, that's just the start of that, and my sort of forced choice for one of his songs. Still a mentaler, just saying that.
Batshit mad, because I remember reading about...
You can't really say mentaler anymore.
Can you? I don't know. Really, no. Maybe if they're like a full bore murderer.
That's what I was thinking. Like, mad in the bad sense, not mad in the like mental health.
No, we're not talking about them people that actually need help. Like Phil Spector needed a gun put at him, is what he needed.
The manners on him.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he needed to hire some bodyguard who just goes around with a gun pointed at him, going, "Not today, Phil. Not now. You know, stop being a scumbag."
Nice.
Exactly. Because I remember reading about Wall of Sound, and one of the big things apparently that he liked doing was he had this idea. Apparently, he had this like picture in his head of what the sound frequency of a tape was like, and how to fill it. So he would bring in like tubas and stuff like that, like weird instruments, and they'd only be barely audible on the tape, but they'd fill up a chunk of frequency that real estate that wasn't being used by other instruments, you know, like absolutely insanity. And it becomes a bit much like almost in the middle of his career as well. I think we've got a couple of those songs where you listen to it and you go like, this sounds really good, but fucking hell, man, there's a lot going on, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's the I don't know what in terms of reverb was used, or was just that echo chamber and stuff like that. I don't really understand a huge amount about reverb, but I know it does involve echo. Surely,
just a close echo. Generally,
a very close echo. Yeah. So another thing he used to do is he wasn't a fan of doing edits or anything like that, or retakes or anything like that. Well, retakes. He would make them practice for hours in the studio. All the guitar players would have to act. All the musicians would have to be in even earlier than the singers, going over it till they all built into the muscle memory, wasn't making a mistake, so it could all be tight and all play together. So that was my first one anyway. Who's your next one?
My next one is, let me just double check if I have the right one. It's I have written down is different from what's on the list as well. We're a bit disorganized today. We're recording mad early.
It's very early.
It's still bright out, and I just had a coffee. That's how early it is. The Beatles' "Let It Be." which I think has to be thrown in there. So the 12th and the final studio album by the Beatles came out on the 8th of May 1970.
And worst.
It's not great. It came out 1 month after the band broke up. The generally unfavourable reviews. It wasn't really a thing. So by 68, the Beatles had quit touring. They were like, we'll record and we'll do studio stuff, but we're not touring anymore. Maybe we'll do the odd gig every now and again, but this is not really our bag. But by Paul McCartney was, a couple of years later, Paul McCartney was like, this is bullshit, I want to tour it again. But apparently Harrison and Lennon were like, I just can't do it anymore, man. I just really don't want to do it. And it was getting to the point where Harrison had like left the band twice and came back and shit like that as well. He just had enough of being on the road. He wanted to kind of do some normal stuff and, you know, do some fucking yoga or whatever George wanted to do. And so they came up with this idea of like, why don't we make an album that's a bit more rock and rolly? Let's leave the psychedelic trippy shit behind us. We've done that already. Why don't we go a bit back to our roots and let's like videotape the whole thing? And they were going to make a movie, the Let It Be movie, and then there was going to be a documentary about the making of the album and all this kind of shit. And Spector had always wanted to work with the Beatles, and he was kind of gearing up. He was going to do some work with Harrison solo. He was going to do some work with Lennon solo. But apparently, Paul McCartney was like, he wasn't mad into what. No,
he didn't like doing. That sound at all.
He wanted like apparently when they were doing like Let It Be, it was supposed to be much more kind of restrained, and most of the stuff on the album was like, if Paul McCartney was playing something on piano, he was like, can we not just have a bit of piano and
stripped like, back just to what it is.
It's me singing with a piano and it'll sound really nice. But like what had happened is they'd record it and it sounded really nice, and they'd come back in 2 days later to the studio, and Spector had like brought in an orchestra and done his whole echo chamber trick, his full wall of sound treatment to it. And all of a sudden, this huge, massive, big song is there. And McCartney's like, what the fuck happened, man? I left here 2 days ago and we had it down, like it was 100%. Because George Martin was also a producer on this album. Like, they used to have this saying where it was produced by George Martin and overproduced by Phil Spector. That's what they used to say. Because
didn't they redid this album, didn't they? Without
they done that weird, there's a weird version of this album that's doing the rounds. I can't remember what it's called.
It's called the de-spectored version.
Yeah.
That's what Paul McCartney calls it anyway, because he couldn't let that go. He said he couldn't listen to the album with the way it was done.
Yeah, they came out. There was one, I think it was originally a bootleg, and I think originally then it got a re-release a couple of years later. That was kind of the George Martin version of the album that was put out. Now, listen,
let's song. Let's be honest. The production is not really the problem with this album, really.
No, it's not. It's not a good album. Let It Be is actually a great song.
I like that song. Yeah, I do like it. Yeah.
But for the rest of the album, there's a few little bits and bobs in it that are alright. But I think Lennon liked the chaos of it. He seemed to thrive in that kind of chaotic. Didn't know what was going to happen.
He hated the album, but he loved recording it.
Exactly, exactly. And McCartney was kind of the opposite. He hated everything about it. He was like, I don't like the way it sounds. I don't like this fella. I think he's a bit fucking weird. And he's shouting all the time and shit like that. And he's like, we're the Beatles. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
if you talk to me like that again, I'll break your jaw.
Yeah, exactly. We're still
the Beatles. I would say that every day to everyone.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we're still who we are. Like, we're still from a bleeding kip. You know what I mean? We might be hanging around fucking India, messing around with sitars the last few years, but I'm still from a dirty port town. I'll knock the teeth out of your head, you know? So, I'd say stuff like that did happen. Cause I know, I think, one of them ended up in a fist fight with him on a couple of occasions. Later on in the career, I think we're going to talk maybe a little bit about that later. But apparently Spector got, when it came to this album, he had final say on edits, mixing, and overdubs. So it didn't even matter what the band said.
Can you imagine poor old George Martin during all this going,
what's he here for? Like, have we not done all right so far? You know what I mean? I think a lot of this album that was written on the fly as well, in there. I think they had a few little bits and bobs, and they came in, they were all round over like arrangements and, you know, who gets to do what and who's singing what and who's playing what, and do we really want to do that song? Because the concept was we wanted to do a rock and roll album, you know, let's do a rock and roll album. And they didn't really get that. And Spector didn't get that. He was making a pop album. He was the pop specialist. You know, if you had like the last kind of 20 years, you had Dr. Dre, you brought in, you wanted to make a pop kind of hip hop record. But back then, you wanted to make a pop record that's going to sell bajillions of copies. Spector was one of the guys you had to have in there because people had got used to the sound.
There's some producers who don't really care how commercially well the album does.
Yeah.
But then there's producers who only care about that. And Spector was one of them.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
It sounds amazing, but he wanted it to be number one every song.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure in his head he was doing the best service to the Beatles that they'd ever had. Like well,
at the same time, he's doing the service that he was brought on to do. And exactly. That is the sound he gave people. Exactly. I don't think it's a good mix.
No, it doesn't work. There's the Beatles. Like when you look back at the other stuff that he does with kind of those guitar-driven bands or like super muso bands, because his history is with kind of vocal groups, you know. And he should
have done a Beach Boys album, not the fucking Beatles.
Exactly. Well, I know that Brian Wilson was obsessed with Phil Spector.
Yeah, a bit of that as well. He was a massive fan of him. That's where I presume he got the idea for the sound.
I think so. Yeah. So like he took those ideas and ran with them himself. Anyway, that was the Beatles. What Let It Be. We're not gonna hang around the songs too much because the story is too big. I think what we're trying to do today is that a lot of people would have seen in the last week or two that some fella called Phil Spector died, and they're saying he was a record producer. And if you're not a super mad muso who has like been not necessarily following the bloke's career, but if you're not old like us, where he was doing shit.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Like he was important when we were young fellas, not necessarily during the time of us being kids, but like the music we were listening to that had been knocking around for a couple of years. He was like there wasn't a day that went by where there wasn't some sort of Phil Spector song played on the radio when we were kids, you know. So this is more for people who don't know who Phil Spector is.
Yeah, and if you listen to this playlist, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's
like it really is. I'm not saying we've picked it. We're saying it's incredible because of what the songs, what they are, and who produced them.
Yeah, big time. Anyway, who's your next one?
My next one is the Crystals with Do Run Run. The Do Run Run from 1963. This is the song with the first collaboration between Jeff Barry, Ellie Greenwich, and Phil Spector.
Yeah, he looks so fine. Yeah.
It's a banger. It's just a great song. Like. It was composed over 2 days in Spector's office in New York, and the title "Do Run Run" was just a placeholder until they figured out what they were going to put in there. And it was sang so many times that he liked it. He goes, you know what, I actually like that. The "Do Run Run," so they just kept it. He wanted the song to be lyrically simple the whole way through, so that kind of lent itself well to that. It's a kind of boy meets girl kind of thing. He wanted the voice and the sound. The voice and the sound to be, and the sound of the production of it to be forefront. Like I said before, he wasn't big on editing, so they spent a huge amount of time in the studio. A lot of people don't know this though, and if you listen really, really, really closely, one of the backing vocalists is actually Cher.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, that's mad. So he was doing some stuff with Sonny Bono, I think, at the time, and he might have even been about to do some stuff with Sonny and Cher. I'm not 100% sure, but they were in the studio at the time. And him and Sonny Bono knew each other. And when just to give Lala Brooks, the singer, something a little extra, I think that's crazy. Like, because if you listen back, I went back to listen to it and I can convince myself I can hear Cher, but I don't know if I can. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure I can, but it could just be in my head. You know, like. I don't know. Like someone could tell me tomorrow, no, that was a lie. She wasn't even on that. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But she was one of the
But you can hear her. Yeah, it would be the same. 100%.
When they played it, the final product over the radio, Spector turned to Sonny Bono and said, that is pure gold.
Yeah.
We're witnessing right now. And it did really, really well. It went to number 3 in the billboards in America.
Very good.
Hit number 5 in the UK and number 1 in Canada. So that was, again, more evidence of his songwriting and production ability. It's mad that like it used to be just raw talent was taken and given to a producer, a writer producer is a mad thing if you think about it. Like it still happens obviously in pop music. But,
definitely.
This was pop music, but we're so used to the rock element of you bring your songs to the producer.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have a say in production. Not like listen, these girls can sing, do something with them.
Yeah,
they have a great look. They can great look and they can sing. So
the 50s and 60s, the 50s and 60s was such a weird time for like random singers and groups being plucked out of obscurity because they looked the part and they were talented enough, but they were just handed over to someone or shopped around with songs. So some random dude in like Albuquerque wrote a song and he sold it to the record label for $20.
Exactly, yeah.
And that just sits then in a filing cabinet.
Or they cover us. They wouldn't have considered them covers then, but they did a song that would only been out the year before and didn't do too well.
That was a big deal.
Like, hang on a second, that's a great song. Let's try that again with a different band. That's 100%. Fucking mad. Like,
it's mad the way like the formation of the modern record industry, kind of as we know it, is probably due a podcast by us because the way it was set up was absolutely insanity.
Yeah.
Like insanity.
Like every time I checked one of these songs, there's a good chance it wasn't the original.
Oh yeah,
like and the original would be like, oh, when did it come out? Like 10 years before that? Like 1 year before that.
Exactly. Like even that teddy bear, the teddy bears to know him is to love him. Like I think Amy Winehouse covered that song. Like who else covered it? Just there was been 3 or 4 covers of it like in the last 20 years. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like these songs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that he was in a band that went to number 1 straight away.
Yeah, like the first band he was in, Out of School, number 1 hit, like worldwide. You know. Absolutely insanity, and because he was known as being he was known for being a producer, but like his songwriting ability was like he definitely had that like keep it simple stupid kind of formula, you know what I mean, where
a lot going on in the background
exactly
that he knew about that they didn't need to know about.
Exactly. Let's just sing the bit and fuck off, and then just make sure you're good at it, and then we'll figure it out later, you know.
Exactly.
Let's get this
well done. That was the Crystals' Do Ron Ron. Yep. I don't think we need to play any of these songs.
No. Most of these songs people are going to know.
Yeah, go on. Who's your next one?
My next one is... Who is my next one? Is Ike and Tina Turner with River Deep, Mountain High. And,
this is a mad one. I only realised recently that he did this.
Yeah, this is a big one. So this came out in 1966. Spector considers this to be the greatest thing he's ever done. He thinks that this is perfect. He thinks he was firing on all cylinders when this song came out. It was more successful.
It is great. It's great.
It's amazing. It was more successful in Europe than it was in America. It done okay, not necessarily a flop, but it done all right in the States. But it done particularly good in Europe, like really, really good in Europe. Strangely enough, when Phil had this weird relationship with Tina Turner, he wasn't actually a big Tina Turner fan. Especially when Ike died, he gave like a little eulogy at his funeral, and he said because Turner had brought out a book, you know, vilifying Ike, saying he battered her and all this type of shit, which he did. He was a scumbag, but like Phil stood up at his funeral and said, like Tina kind of made a bollocks of a relationship here because like Ike Turner was the talented one. He was the one that everybody was chasing around, and on any given night that Ike Turner had 5 women on stage doing backing vocals for him, and any one of them could have been a Tina Turner. Like she just got lucky. This is what he said. Like any one of them could have been lucky. Now Tina came out.
I don't think he just had no respect for women. He just sounds of it.
Yeah, he just wasn't like into being sound with women whatsoever.
Yeah.
Tina Turner herself said, listen, this song was made so well, written so well that I think she said that she didn't say it was a shame that she was on it or Ike was on it, but she said that because they were black, it was put into the R&B charts. While if they had kept their identities secret or had a white duo singing it, that it would have been number 1 worldwide without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the fact that it was forced into the R&B charts and the black charts, quote unquote, because they were African American, it was almost a disservice to the song, you know. But he went out of his way.
That was protecting white number 1s.
100%, because they wouldn't have had a chance.
About 2 decades, they wouldn't have had a one.
No fucking way, man. Not with the savage shit that was being put into that R&B charts. Like now we look back on it and we go like, fucking. Like, you got Elvis, a couple of great Elvis songs. To be fair, which are mostly probably written by black people or stolen off them.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
We always say this about Led Zeppelin and Elvis. We're not saying they don't do anything, but we have feels right to throw it in there.
Oh, yeah, just a little dig, just a little, you know. Okay, yeah, Elvis, you're great now, you're a great performer, you're iconic, and you know you live forever and all this stuff. But you're a robbing bastard. One in the guffey, you cunt. Exactly.
I know what you did.
Yeah, I know what you did last summer. You robbing bastard. But yeah, that's Ike and Tina Turner with River Deep Mountain High, which is does have that's a great example of that wall of sound feel, because when it's kicking off, it sounds like it's going 1,000 miles an hour, but it's so full, like there's so much going on, it's almost overload, you know. But it's a cracking song. It's a great midpoint in this playlist as well. So who was your next one?
My next one is a very important one for the Phil Spector story, and it's "Be My Baby" by the Ronettes. So, Ronettes, you mentioned earlier before, Ronnie Bennett was the lead singer of the Ronettes, and when Phil Spector heard them, he went, "I want to manage and produce you." Yeah. He created amazing hits for the band. Like you were saying earlier, he came off an affair with his first wife.
Yep.
And he took over this band and sort of took her life over, basically.
Yeah.
Everything was going through him. Do you know what I mean? So "Be My Baby" was actually, it's such a good song, right? This is probably my favorite song, possibly my favorite song on the playlist, I think. I absolutely just love this song.
Yeah.
Never listened on the radio or something like that. It's also, well, not that I listen to the radio much anymore, but I never hear it like in a shop or anything like that.
Yeah, it used to be one of those things that was on all the time, especially on
all the time,
movies.
Maybe
It'd be in all the time.
Maybe just we're at that age, we're not going to hear it from the 60s. But this was, Billboard named it the number one on their list of the 100 greatest girl group songs of all time. So if you take into account, like, Girls Aloud, Steps had a couple of fellas in them. You know, whatever way you want to look at it.
Spice Girls.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What I remember that was the guys
Temptations.
No one remembers the guys in Steps except H. No one remembers their voices. So
no,
as far as I'm concerned, they're like a girl-led band.
Unless they had a rap bit. If they had a rap bit, you'll remember. They all had a rap bit at one stage.
But yeah, like I said, Spice Girls, Bananarama. This is what most people consider number one to be the number one girl group song of all time, and it's hard to argue. Ronnie Spector is actually the only singer on the song.
Oh, very cool.
The rest of the Ronettes did not appear on it for whatever reason. Maybe Spector had this similar thing, like that's who was going to be repeated.
Oh, exactly.
He's good at layering anyway. So, this has been stated as being one of the most influential songs for thereafter the recording of pop music and the influence of Beach Boys. This song is the one that got the Beach Boys, like got them.
Yeah.
Brian Wilson said that this is the greatest pop song ever.
Yeah.
So this is his one that gave him all the so the wall of sound and the approach to pop, where you can have, like, there's a sort of sadness about this "Be My Baby" and a lot of these 60s songs. If you go back and listen to them, they're pop. Even the happy ones have a sort of melancholy feel to them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't know if it's the production or I don't know. It's how much effort and emotion is going into the vocals that it sort of transcends pop music. But then again, pop music back then was a different thing. It was huge. Yes. It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was popular because it was so good. Exactly. Nowadays, pop is popular not necessarily because it's good. It's just that's, like you've touched on, the way the record labels have pushed it. Yeah. They control it now. It used to be,
it's a genre now. Like,
people used to control what was good. Now the record label figured out somewhere along the way, holy shit, we can tell them what's good.
Exactly.
Even like with River Deep Mountain High, when that was released and that didn't do as well in America, that's like the public. The public got it wrong.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
Yeah,
that's 100%. Telling them, or it could be badly promoted from radio and stuff like that. But that was a time when the public would say no. Now that does happen sometimes still. It happened with Taylor Swift. It can happen with certain people where sometimes the public go, you know what, that's not that great anymore.
Yeah.
And the record label has to go back to the drawing board. But most of the time, if they have a new artist, you are going to hear them and you will be told that they are brilliant.
Yes.
That's the end of it. So that was a big hit for him. That was a big hit, personally bad hit for him at the time. I think he stopped doing it for a while. But this, you touched on a lot of stuff about her horrible home life with him, because you'd also done it on another podcast as well. So we don't want to keep retreading too much all ground. But he had 3 adopted children, like you mentioned.
Yep.
And Dante Phillips and Gary, of 2 of them, they claimed that Spector made them lose their virginity to Spector's then girlfriend.
Yeah, after something like that. Grim.
That's for their birthday, I think it was, or something like that. And like pretty much well underage, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
there was also some grimness where I think one of them had said, I think both of them might be dead now. I'm not sure. But
one of them died of leukemia, I think.
Yeah.
One of his other adopted children died of leukemia.
Yeah, I think one of them said that this is something I read. I don't know if it's real.
It's very hard to get stuff on this
stuff.
It's
so difficult. But one of them said that he used to put like bags over their heads and make them like grope him while he messed around with his girlfriend as well. Like, I don't know. Like with his fucked up childhood, and then, you know, him trying to raise children, I can only imagine how fucked up they were as well, you know, especially
without their mother, like, you know,
exactly, you know, like talking about like twice abandoned, you know, like they were given up for adoption. As I don't think they were babies either when they were adopted. I think they might have been a couple of years old, and then the mother leaving them, and like forcefully against their will, you know, and being left with this fucking maniac.
Yeah, like a lot of people go, how could you leave her children? She was terrified for her life. For her life,
and they weren't ever going to have a mother if she was dead. You know, at least she might have a chance to stay in their life. Mother.
Yeah, and just getting through it and hoping, like, thankfully he has enough money to keep them fed at least.
Exactly. There's probably somebody working there that can keep an eye, you know.
And she may not have seen anything that would lead her to believe she was going to do that thing with the new girlfriend. And
who knows? Who fucking knows?
Yeah, just mentally scared from having to look at a coffin with a glass lid downstairs when you're going in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, she probably did the right thing in a sense. Also, back then, she might not have had a say. She hadn't got the money.
Probably. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my favorite one. I think it's my favorite one of the list. Be My Baby by the Ronettes.
Yeah.
She said in an interview, he is an amazing producer and the lousiest of husbands. So that sort of sums him up. Yeah. Really, pretty much. Not enough, but it sums him up. Who's your next one?
My next one is the Ramones with another Ronette song, "Baby I Love You." Which
it's mad that we've gone from the Ronettes, like, and the Crystals to dipping his toe in the Beatles and then going full into punk. Like that's some stretch, isn't it?
Now apparently he had wanted to work with the Ramones for years, and because this came out in 1980 on Sawyer Records, and they'd never. Like Tommy Ramone, their drummer, he was doing most of the production for them from the start.
They didn't really care that much about it.
Not really. Like,
although it did sound great.
It does for the time, and even now some of it sounds amazing. But they weren't really. They were a punk band with pop sensibilities. Like, you think about how they even named themselves after stuff like the Ronettes and like the Spector's Tree and all. Like, him giving Ronnie Spector that name and that type of shit. Like, they are kind of embroiled in some sort of weird dance somewhere along the line, you know. But apparently the record labels, Sawyer, I can't bleed and talk today. They were.
Yeah, we normally have a few drinks in this and a bit later.
A bit relaxed, man. I have all my jobs done. I'm in my jammies. I've got a belt and all on me now. I look like a real human. I look like a real person. Like, I could go to shop right now and nobody look at me. But apparently the record label were like, maybe like, there might be a bit of like pop music to be squeezed out of the Ramones because the songs are catchy. But maybe if we can kind of, you know, get a bit of a mid-paced clip out of them instead of them bursting through all this stuff and get some production into them and shit like that. Maybe we can make some more money out of them even. So apparently they were like, I don't know about Phil Spector. Like, he does all, like, they loved all that music. They loved all that kind of girl band, the boy band stuff as well. And they were like, I don't know though. Will he see how we're going to make it? Because you have to remember, we've done a show about the Ramones a while ago about how much they all hated each other. Like, talking about a band ready to fucking explode. And then you put me in the studio with Phil Spector. So nobody liked recording under Phil Spector from the Ramones. I'm
not surprised there.
It was all very.
This was the early 80s, wasn't it?
This was 1980. So
where he's full batshit now.
Full batshit mad. So he's out and out known to be a fucking head case who was obsessed with guns and shit like that. And again, we could probably cover this song before. We might not have covered this song, but we definitely covered this session where they were doing Rock and Roll High School, and he made Johnny Ramone play like the opening chord like 500 fucking times, and they were all identical. And he just kept no again, and like literally hundreds of times until they just stumbled upon the one where Phil went, "That's the one." And he was like, "Fucking hell, all right, okay, right, we'll see it tomorrow." He's like, "No, we'll have to do the rest of it now." So it was just, everything was done. Like, Tina Turner said when she was recording Mountain High River Deep, and she was saying that like she must have sang that song like 5,000 times until he decided it was right. That was his gimmick. It's just do it. But the Ramones were not used to this whatsoever. They're used to going in. Here's exactly, like just literally pissing through it, saying, "Here we go. There's 10 grand for a month in a studio, some random halfway decent studio. We've got Tommy Ramone. He's our drummer. So that's double duty. He's going to produce it, engineer it, and play the drums. Like, savage. We get this done in 2 weeks' time." So all of a sudden, they had this budget of $200,000 in 1980 to record this album, End of the Century, for Sawyer. And Phil Spector was going to take full advantage of this. So apparently he told them, doing Baby I Love You wasn't even a thing. They weren't going to do it. But while they were in the studio, he was like, "You should record one of my songs. You should do a cover of one of my songs." Because he was mad for covers. Because lots of the stuff that he'd been doing and working with, they were doing covers as well. Like you said, all redos of all their songs. Yeah. So they were like, "I don't know, man. I'm not really into covers. Like, we do Spider-Man, and that's, that's good. But we don't want to, we don't really want to do covers. No, you should do the Ronettes. You should do Baby I Love You. Like, it'll really, really work." And I'm like, I don't know. And then they done it. And they're like, "That's really fucking good, actually. That sounds amazing." And to this day, for me, it's one of the better Ramone songs. It's so fucking good.
I like it. I like it a lot, yeah.
Like, it sounds amazing. It almost sounds like a Christmas song. It's that big. Because Phil Spector put out what is considered to be one of the greatest Christmas albums of all time, really, really early in his career. It was almost like a compilation with loads of people he'd worked with in the past and people that he hadn't worked with in the past, and he put them together, wrote a load of songs, like Christmas songs, and put it out. And still to this day, people talk about this kind of Spector compilation of Christmas albums, or Christmas songs. Well, apparently he walked around with the gun constantly. There was rumours that, like, Dee Dee Ramone said that, like, he held the gun to my head, because Dee Dee said, "This is bullshit. Like, I would have been done recording all my bits like 6 weeks ago by now. And you still have me coming in and fucking doing all this bullshit." And he said, "I'm going to leave." And Spector pulled the gun out and held it to his head and said, "Oh, you're free to leave whenever you want. Like, just walk out the door there, you prick. Go on, walk out the door." But then Johnny would have been very much kind of pro-gun advocate and a lot more conservative and right-wing, was like, "Oh no, he was great to work with. I don't think the stuff worked. I don't think the stuff worked pretty well on the heavy, fast stuff."
There's a lot of people, even after the murder, who are still like, he's grand, he's good, he's brilliant. Because they got what they wanted from him, and to them, that, he's just a king.
Of course. Well, they also are stocked now with requests for interviews for the next fucking 20 years. Like,
so I should say like that as well. Like, he hadn't killed someone by then, but they had known of
that we know of. Yeah. We'd only threatened to kill loads of people. But that was End of the Century with the Ramones, which is actually, it's one of those albums that Ramones purists don't like it, but it's a perfectly good introduction to the Ramones for people. It doesn't really sound like the Ramones, not really, in its style, but it is recorded very well, and it's a famous album. There's a documentary called End of the Century, or Story of the Century as well, which chronicles a lot. They've a kind of videotape and stuff like that of them recording that album, and it was hairy. There's an awful lot of screaming and shouting and Joey hiding in the corner, that type of stuff. But by the time they were done, you ended up with bangers like this song. Like I said, Johnny didn't think that the faster, heavier stuff worked well with his production techniques, but he said that the lighter, slower, kind of more poppy stuff definitely took advantage of his style and really, really worked, So that's the Ramones. Who is your next one?
My next one is the Righteous Brothers, You've Lost That Loving Feeling.
So good.
That song is, that'll put chills up your spine, isn't it?
So good.
1964. The last few I've picked are literally a year between each other, I think.
He worked like a pig in the mid-60s.
Yeah, he did. So here's the thing, right? Spector was on the road with the Ronettes at the time, and he saw this band playing. They were supporting the Ronettes, the Righteous Brothers. They had a few minor hits, and when he saw them in 1964, he went, "Yeah, I'm going to get you signed, and I'm going to be your producer." So they were like, oh, "Well, okay, yeah, you've got." I don't know if he had a number one production wise at that stage, but everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew who the Ronettes were. They were supporting the Ronettes. You go with him. So he did You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling. But an interesting one I was going to pick was Unchained Melody.
Yeah.
Well, here's a really interesting fact about Phil Spector. He never did the album cuts. He only did the big singles.
All right.
Throughout almost all of the acts we've picked. I don't know if he... a couple of John Lennon ones maybe. He did all of them, but most of the time, he just did a couple of the big, maybe 2 to 3 singles of the thing, and leave the rest to someone else. People like basically say, you can't afford to get me to do the rest of the album. And also, if he wasn't going to hear them on the radio, he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's the thing about, he did record a song called Hung On You, and Unchained Melody was the B-side. But when Hung On You didn't do too well, DJs flipped it over and started playing this song Unchained Melody, and it got huge. Yeah. And that enraged Phil Spector because his song wasn't being played on the radio.
Sickened.
Although what he then said was, he left the rest of the album cuts to Bill Medley, who was the second half of the Righteous Brothers, who produced their stuff before Phil Spector ever came along. Bill Medley said that Phil Spector would always put a throwaway song that wasn't meant to be played on the B-side.
Yeah.
So that it would never happen. This situation could never happen.
Yeah, yeah.
But he put fucking Unchained Melody on the B-side.
Yeah.
And all the DJs went, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It has to be one of the greatest songs ever written.
It actually started a fake whoa that turned into the whoa. And then all of a sudden, Phil Spector is being then credited as the producer,
of course,
of Unchained Melody,
because he's on the sessions,
which Bill Medley said he absolutely disputes, and he said, like, listen to the piano playing, and that's me. He goes, if I had thought this was going to be a huge song, I would have got one of the Wrecking Crew or something in to do this, someone good. So I think, I'm not sure whether there was a fixed up version or something like that. I'm not really 100% sure, but maybe I found that very interesting.
Maybe because
at the time, Medley was picking up all these tips from Phil Spector because he was a producer already of their stuff. You know, it might not have been as good as Phil Spector. So I don't know. You'd have to get a professional to listen to the both of them and say there's an ongoing dispute as to who is. But as of now, Phil Spector is down as a producer of Unchained Melody.
I'd say he just had that written in a contract somewhere. I was like, this had to taken off, and I was kind of involved in those sessions. So I definitely influence it. Therefore, I'm down as some sort of like executive producer or something, you know.
Yeah. So, but we do know what he did do. You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling. So that's why I've picked that one. That song
as well.
It's for me better song than
Unchained.
Melody.
I love Unchained. I love Unchained Melody. Jesus Christ.
No, I love it as well. Absolutely love it. But I just think I feel like an Unchained Melody, you're always waiting for the big bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like it's brilliant all the way through, but there's one bit that stands out. So You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling is 10 out of 10 from the first second.
Yeah, it gets in.
The last second. Yeah. So I don't know. I just prefer. Look, we're talking about 2 of the best songs of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
So what happened was relationships started to sour down. I couldn't find much information between around that time as to why the Righteous Brothers decided to move. Well, I did. I found a little bit about. They moved record label away from. Whatever record label Spector was either owned or worked on. I couldn't figure that out. Whether you might know more about that than me. If he owned his own one or worked for one, it doesn't really matter.
He had one earlier on in his career, but I think he ended up making more money being a hired gun. Later on.
So when they moved away to someone else and another producer, he moved to Verve MGM Records, and that led to Spector suing them. So things got really kind of dirty then.
Yeah,
and what happened was Bill Medley continued to, that's actually 600,000 in the 60s. That's what the MGM had to pay Spector. So he got nearly like the guts of
that would have not far off most of the money made by that. You know what I mean? Back then. That's such a big deal.
But here's the problem. They were so huge that MGM, Verve MGM thought that's peanuts compared to what we're going to earn. But the new producer was Bill Medley, and he tried to do the formula and all, but they never had the same amount of success. Yeah. So I'm sure they made their money back, but Phil Spector took the royalties of the other one and that $600,000. Yeah, they never reached the same kind of success. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that one.
So killer track, like, and
it's an amazing song, yeah.
Like his influence is obviously written all over everything the Writers Brothers done from that time onwards, like, you know what I mean? So,
I remember what I wanted to say now. Bill Medley said then in an interview, because everyone gets, like you said, when the murder happens, they go back straight on the phone to all these people.
Oh yeah. What was he like? Did he kill you?
If you're clever, did he kill you? If you're clever and sound, you'll shut your mouth.
Oh yeah,
and say nothing.
Yeah.
Bill Medley didn't. He goes, you know what? I think that was an accident.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, why did you say anything at all?
Why do you know you're on his side? Shut the fuck up. Just say, listen, you've gone with us.
Yeah. And the gas thing is, they had a really bad relationship towards the end, and he still said, I don't know. Like, with so little information, why do famous people have to always say something?
They have to, don't they?
They fucking have to.
Imagine all the people.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that was You've Lost That Loving Feeling from 1964. One of Spector's best produced songs.
Definitely.
Who's your next one?
My next one is my last one. And it's also the last thing that he done. And it was for the band Star Sailor, if you remember them.
This is a mad one, yeah.
This is batshit mad, yeah. So
initially I would have thought, there's a band with a few quid thrown around.
Yeah, and it was a weird thing as well. So Star Sailor came out in like the year 2000, like a post-Britpop kind of rock and rolly indie band. They're fine. They're grand.
It's somewhere between, like a little, like, do you know what they were like? They were like Coldplay, sort of Keen type thing.
Yeah.
But they never had like a good Coldplay or Keen song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest with you, they're very watered down.
Yeah.
No, they're grand, but it's watered down.
Exactly. It was just, again, it's the year 2000, and Britpop was starting to kind of wane. But there were still labels, but every English fucking band in the world that had a guitar was just getting signed, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just happening. So the first album came out done particularly well, done all right. They're starting to get the shit together for a second album, but they're being kind of run into the ground on tours by the record label. And so they're playing every single night all over the world. And at one gig, this girl comes up to them and goes, listen, my dad is really, really likes yours, you know? Yeah. And they're like, who's your dad? So, my dad's is Phil Spector. And I'm like, excuse me? He goes, yeah, that's Phil Spector. Like, he loves you. He wants to work with you. And they're like, they know about the legends of Phil Spector. Like, the last thing he had done was, Jesus, like 20 odd years ago. The last thing they'd done, I think, was End of the Century by Ramones. Was the last full record he'd done.
Yeah.
So, what you have to understand as well is that around this time, all these stories were coming out about. We talked about this on another podcast as well. I'll give it a quick run over. So there was these stories coming out that, like, Phil Spector was walking around his house all night dressed as Batman and stuff like that.
That's right. Actually, that happened. That started earlier than that.
Yeah, no, he was doing these like weird little things where he'd invite like a journalist over to stay the night, or stay for a week with him, just to see his process, because he's still mad famous. And they were like, he's so fucking mad, lads. Like, this cunt is, I don't know what to do with him. Like, he gave me a gun when I walked into the house, and I had to just keep a gun on me at all times in the house, and this type of shit, But there was loads of stories. Like, as I said, apparently for a year solid, every single night he'd get dressed up in a full-blown Batman costume, like an armoured Batman costume or whatever, and walk around, like, patrol his mansion at night dressed as Batman, but with guns strapped to him. So there was loads of this like, the legend of Phil Spector had grown because he wasn't necessarily active in the business. So they said, let's give it a shot. Now, apparently, he was grand to work with. He was definitely weird, and he showed up wearing one of the mad wigs and all this kind of shit. He only ended up producing 2 songs. on
that's
the
right.
album.
Yeah, like I was saying, that's his thing. He would not do the whole album. Exactly. It's not going to be on the radio. He doesn't give a shit.
Exactly. So these are like they're not I think he was involved in a couple of other bits and pieces, but these would have been this song in particular, "Silence Is Easy," would have been one of the kind of bigger songs I think that he was involved with before he gets locked away. The album sold like nearly 60,000 copies, which is still not bad even in 2003.
Yeah, you see, sometimes I forget that like a band like Top Loader and Star Sailor
done mad money for a while.
Mad money. Because it's just simply read for a new generation.
That's
it's that kind of pop.
Dancing in the moonlight. And your ma's clicking her fingers. Everybody's. And you're all looking at her going, Ma, what are you doing? Everybody's feeling young and bright.
Here's the problem, right? Here's the problem with these bands, right? I can stay away from these and they're fine. Yeah. But here's the real problem is, right? You always have someone on the outskirts of your life, right, that knows you like a bit of music. And that's their entry point to talk to you. And you have to pretend that you're remotely interested. Here, that new band, the guitar, it's guitars and drums and all. Star Sailor, they're deadly, aren't they? Like, yeah, sure.
Exactly. So apparently they ended up sacking him off this album. I think he was meant to do the entire album. He ended up doing 2.
Well, I'd imagine it's because he shot a woman in the face. It was just
before
same time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just. I think this was the album came out in 2003, so this would have been 2001, 2002. They were working on the production of this thing.
Can you imagine them going, God, I can't believe our luck. That's really good luck that we got Phil Spector to produce.
Exactly.
2 songs for, oh God, I knew it was too fucking good to be true.
Exactly, yeah. And, but yeah, they ended up having to get rid of him because it was just, apparently, like, you didn't know who you were going to get, on any given day. One day he come in, he's 100% sound, and he's like, it's like, oh, that's a great idea, let's try that. And the next day he's absolutely like fascism personified. And he's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. And he had this whole deal, he's like, no digital recording at all. They went to Abbey Road. We has to be all analog, and we're not going to use any sort of effects. We're going to use natural effects. Apparently, he brought in one like piece of outboard. He brought in like an echo machine or something like that because Abbey Road didn't have an echo room or something like that. So he said he'd use a digital echo to try and get his effects. And like I said, 2 songs, "Silence Is Easy," and one called like "The Dove Flies," or I can't remember what the fuck it's called.
I remember reading about this, and Phil Spector was convinced that this song was going to be astronomically big.
Yeah, exactly. And it came.
And have you heard it? Like,
yeah, it's all right. It's just whatever, It's just a song. It's just a song. I think
it's inoffensive. It's there.
Exactly. It's just a song, and I think he I think he might have been out for so long, and he was out of the business for so long that when his daughter, someone a bit younger was saying like, these guys are like, she likes him, and so that's his only actual like influence in the world of what's happening in music, because he's not, like you said it yourself, he only works on the big singles.
I think she just played the last album in the gaff all the time, and he was like, what's that?
Yeah, or she's like, these guys are the next big thing. He goes, okay, daughter, I'll work with them if you want. And off he goes, and it just turns out to be a fucking disaster where they don't know what to do with him, and they don't know how to work like this, because when they done their first album, they said themselves they were kids, they didn't really know what style they wanted to do, when they're only starting to find their feet with the second album. And then all of a sudden Phil Spector running around fucking Abbey Road with them, and he's screaming at them one day and he's patting them on the back the next, and they like the sound of that single, of that silent song, and I think they kind of fucked themselves up there. I don't know what happened to this band after this album. The only reason I ever even heard of this album is because Spector worked on it a little bit.
It's because they have fans that listen on the radio, and if their stuff is not on the radio all the time, those fans are not loyal fans to Star Sailor. Exactly. I'm sure they do have a few people that are, like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are, but they're not. They're only given the amount of success that they probably deserve, and they're probably a bit more, if I'm being honest with you. Like, they're not, like you said, they're not either good or bad. They're just
a band. It's just lads who make music. Like, they said themselves. Yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. No, the one thing that annoyed me is he said that, I remember reading about this, and he was like, when someone asked him, he was like, what's the thing about the whole, like, him shooting someone? He was like, I saw a photograph of him being like taken away in a car.
I was sad, wasn't it? Sad. Yeah,
Fuck off, you donkey.
They said, it's actually written right in front of me in a quote. If he's innocent, it's an incredibly traumatic experience for a 62-year-old man to go through. Seeing his sad face in that horrible picture where he's being taken into the police car with handcuffs on, his head was bowed. It wasn't nice seeing him like that. That's a quote. Shut the fuck up, man.
Like, you know what's worse is getting shot in the face.
In the mouth, man. In the mouth. Yeah. He made her suck the dick of that gun. Do you know what I mean? And then said that she was kissing it.
I wonder, did he get that call up the void when that gun was in her mouth? And he goes, it's done. Exactly. What would happen? What would happen if I just fucking pulled that trigger?
Exactly.
Of course he did. Here's the thing about
the big red button.
Habitual abusers, right?
Yeah. Here's
what they always say about abusers like that, right? If you don't get away from him, he'll kill you.
Yeah.
People like that will always. This is why I don't believe that it was suicide. This is personally. I don't really care if I'm wrong or right, but it just goes to show. I think that these people who are abusers for years and years and years, and it goes unchecked and allowed, they will only push further and further and further until someone dies. I honestly think that. Like that old saying of, if you don't leave him, he'll kill you. That's a famous thing that everybody's not famous, but it's a constant thing in the world that you hear said, because abuse just gets worse. It just does. I don't know. Yeah, I know he was extremely damaged goods.
He was fucked. Apparently, even when he was doing the Star Sailor album, he kept LA time, so he wouldn't do UK time in Abbey Road. It's like, no, we start work at 6 o'clock in the evening and we finish at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, because that's like 11 till 7 type of situation in Los Angeles. And they're like, May. But apparently he was fucking mad. Like, one of them walked in wearing a pair of Reebok runners and he was like, what the fuck are they? And he's like, Reeboks. He goes, never heard them. So they were, right, okay, let's.
He was on his way.
Yeah, so they said, listen, we're just going to self-produce our records from now on. It was grand and all, but let's.
No, they all put their hands into a circle and they said, we have to promise that we will never shoot someone, and then we can produce our albums, and this will never happen again.
This will never happen again. Anyway, that was Star Sailor, with one of the last Spector produced songs. Like I said, he's done 2 on that album. I haven't even heard the other one, to be honest with you, whatever it's called. Dove Flies. I don't know what the fuck it's called.
Imagine that was like a B-side.
Imagine a killer. I'm going to listen to it now when I finish, just in case. It's an absolute fucking rager. Who is your last one?
My last one is John Lennon, because these are some famous recording stories of the early 70s. Imagine is from 1971 is ranked as one of the greatest songs of all time by most people. Like, most people wouldn't disagree with it. I don't really care. I really like Imagine, and I'm really, really impressed with how special the production is on it. I think as far as Spector goes, he did a great job. The song itself, like, if it disappeared from the world tomorrow, I wouldn't really care.
If I never heard it again, it wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I do like it, but don't have any affection or affinity to it at all. When I hear it, I always go, the drums sound like, every part of it. It's more of a production thing I'm interested in with that song. But there are plenty of videos online of Lennon in the recording booth with Yoko Ono and Spector, because he would credit Yoko Ono and Spector to be producers, which, if you're Phil Spector, must have been a little bit annoying, because she is then sort of your peer in the studio when, like, whatever she did a great job at being a muse. Yeah. And probably if you like some stuff with the Plastic Yoko Ono band or whatever like that,
you're wrong, but
you're wrong, but great. But to have Phil Spector shout in to do something and Yoko Ono say, no, I don't think so, I think we should do it this way. Come on.
Sickener.
Come on, like, sickener. But John Lennon, fucking, that's what he wanted. Yeah. That's what he got. Personally, I would have wrecked my head, but they were the duo in the recording studio. He also produced George Harrison's solo stuff. Here's a mad one. Yeah. Harrison doesn't like it. He goes, that's too echoey. And a lot of people agree with his stuff is extremely echoey. Yeah. Like, if you go back to listen to Harrison's solo stuff, which is, I love it. I still think it's the best of all the Beatles solo stuff.
Probably, yeah.
But he might have overdone the echoey. Definitely, George Harrison himself said would have much preferred a cleaner, sort of stripped down style. But he was rapping songs as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
During the recording, the covers album Rock and Roll in 1975, which is John Lennon's album, doing a multitude of his favourite songs.
And apparently that was just a contractual obligation thing as well, wasn't it?
I think it possibly was, yeah. But he didn't have a problem with it because that's I don't know. I don't really know much about the origins of that album. I only kind of know like that was what John Lennon described as like the worst time in his life.
I think he had a record left on his contract and he just wanted it over and done with some songs. Do a folk covers.
Do a covers one, yeah. This is considered the worst time of his life for him because he'd become estranged from Yoko Ono, and his relationship with Phil Spector was volatile at the time. It's weird because they were having mad parties in the studio, which is just that kind of debauchery is what John Lennon actually really loved. And I think that Spector loved it as well, the madness. Like you said, addicted to that chaos.
I think so, yeah.
That chaos. And they think that great music is going to come from it. A funny little story about that. They think that this is like, think about it, right? Spector is master of like the charts. John Lennon is seen as the greatest musician in the world at the time.
Yeah.
Not musician maybe, but songwriter.
Yeah.
Where do they get their kicks anymore?
Exactly.
He's releasing songs with Yoko Ono that are just fucking bullshit and they're going to number one. So at the time Yoko Ono wasn't in the studio for this one. May Pang was, who was John Lennon's girlfriend. Used to be the assistant for the pair of them. Told a story about how they all got kicked out of the studio because someone smashed a liquor bottle on the main console. Like, so that's enough for that's the line with Phil Spector to kick them out. But the line that John Lennon had with him was when Spector fired a gun off in the studio, and Lennon said that famous line. He said, "Listen, Phil, if you're gonna kill me, but don't fuck with my ears. I need them." It's like without my ears, I might as well be dead. So just go all in or nothing, you know what I mean? So it was around this time where people started to hear stories that he was dressing up, and a famous story is that he used to do this all the time, and people from who came to the house and people who worked for him said this, that he would turn off all the lights in the house. This is a mansion now. that looks like a castle. Yeah, and he'd dress up as Batman and walk slowly around the house on his own. Okay. So this is also around around the time that he had that mad car accident. Sorry, the images of that. Yeah, like the madness of what went on in the house. So
because he was mangled, like he was full, he was absolutely mangled by that car accident. Like
so after that car accident, something changed with him and John. He went missing after that, like, and didn't talk to anybody till one time. He called John Lennon up and says, "I have your tapes here."
Yeah, your masters.
Okay, great. Yeah, can I have them? And he goes, "Yeah, I need loads of money." He went, "You can't have the money now. You'll have it whenever." So he went, "Well, no, you're not having them then." And then he walked around in his Batman costume again. Yeah. So eventually, John Lennon's and his label sued to get the tapes back. They got them back, right? Now, John Lennon, this is still thinking that John Lennon thinks everything he does, even in that state of absolute madness, was great. He said he listened to them and they were just garbage.
Yeah, garbage.
Absolute garbage. He said, we were all out of tune. The production wasn't even any good on it.
Yeah.
So the both of them partying and going full pelt at it all the time didn't produce it. So that was maybe a little knock to John Lennon's ego at the time. And at the same time, while he was suing Spector, Chuck Berry was suing him.
Yeah.
For
lifting,
eventually sue him. Although
I think Spector asked, but before he gave the masters over, he asked for £90,000 and they gave it to him.
That's not too much, considering he got 600 from the Writers Brothers.
Exactly. That's a very specific number though, so that means he owed somebody something. You know?
I think after that was the last time that they ever worked together because it was toxic. Do you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, they're just on the piss all day, screaming and shouting at each other. Yeah.
Until John Lennon died, that was the last time. Now he did produce a posthumous album. Is that how you pronounce that? Posthumous?
I don't know. I say posthumous is what I say, but I think it's posthumous.
It's called Man Lover Lane or something like that. I can't remember the name of that album. And he did Yoko Ono's first single after John Lennon's murder. So until Star Sailor, nothing.
Yeah.
Really after that. And
crazy.
It's crazy, yeah. No one really wanted to be around him. The stories of someone like that will get too much. You would want to... I think do you know what I think? I think his technique might have been sort of copied and done.
It probably been done better by the time...
Maybe even better with people who are not going to pull a gun on you and
dress up as Batman or whatever.
Batman.
Yeah, and kidnap their wives.
So yeah, I don't think anyone really believes that it wasn't a murder. If like, it's hard to tell, like in a whole thing of like loads of drugs and drink. But I think when you put a gun in someone's mouth and it goes off, it's your fault.
Yeah. So don't be pulling it. If you have a gun, Grant, don't be pulling it out all the time. Like,
so if someone said to me, it actually turned out to be a mad accident, I'd still go, I don't care. I'm still
put the gun at, whether it went off or not. Like, I don't think she shouted to his gaffer the gun. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
So it's hard to really put a little stamp at the end of this. A genius producer who found an amazing way of doing things. But
a scumbag.
Horrible person,
yeah, just a bad person.
But it's a story that I'm glad we covered, because he did die, and it was we actually, I think we've talked about a Phil Spector episode for about a year.
Yes, for ages.
So as soon as this happened, we were like, we didn't know what episode we were going to do. It sort of made sense.
Exactly. Let's just do it. It makes sense. He's dead. That's it for this week. We are back. When are we back? Monday after, with a fresh podcast, and I think live show will be over, so it'll be 2 weeks for another live show. Just keep your eye out on the social media pages for a live show dates, and thank you very much. If you like supporting us, you got the patreon.com/the Lost Art Podcast. If you want to tip us, you got the ko-fi.com/the Lost Art Podcast, or generally just go to lostartpodcast.com, and all of our links are up there. Do us a favor, rate, subscribe to, share, give us a dig out on all that bullshit, and it is much appreciated, and it goes a long way, and our share goes a long way, because we generally don't see the shares until like a week later. That's the way Facebook works, so we don't even know if anybody's giving us a dig out. That's the
thing. Yeah, sometimes, like, especially with the live show, someone like will post, I'll see it coming up on my timeline days later, I'm like, right, it's like on the day, they share it on the day, and it's great.
We don't see it.
The best time.
Yeah.
And I don't think other people see it either, but look, just please do it anyway.
Exactly.
Instagram's a really good way to share it as well, if you can.
Exactly. Instagram's great. Just share out a link to whatever episode you listen to if you like it. That's enough for people to get to the kind of the hub of all of them. We updated our list of all the episodes as well on Facebook. The link is floating around there somewhere. So if there's something in particular you're looking for, chances are we might have covered it already.
Maybe we're too prolific, Gar. Is that the problem? We're too prolific?
No, there's no such thing.
Too reliable?
No, because you can. I think at the start of something like this, we're nearly 2 years into it, and we still need to keep the pressure up. But if it got to the point where we had millions of downloads and we were doing all right, then you can sit back and start fucking scratching your hole. But I think if you start scratching your hole before anybody knows who you are, you're just going to give it up, I think. So,
so what we're trying to say is share it, please.
Please share it. Tell people that you like the Lost Art Podcast, because I was looking at us like in the charts and all our numbers the other day, and they're real good. But I don't know anybody who listens to us, bar the people who listen to us all the time. So it would be nice to get some new people on board for our fragile egos as we get older, going into 2021, because I'm old as fuck and everything hurts, and it'd be nice to know that I've done something with my life. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again in a week's time. Good luck and good night.
All right, take it easy.